All right, I'm here with Ryan Collins, SBA lender of Trilliant Federal Credit Union. So
That's
we're
right.
shooting this at my house in Madison, Wisconsin.
That's right.
Ryan, diving right in here, tell us about how you got into SBA lending.
Yeah, so I'll go actually all the way back to college. So I went to a small school in Iowa and went and got an accounting degree. But while I was doing that, I had the itch to support entrepreneurs. And so in school, I also got a degree in entrepreneurship. And at that time, I didn't know what that meant for my career. I just knew it was a good thing to have, and that, eventually I wanted to either be one or support them in some manner. Flash forward a couple of years, I had been an accountant working in the real world, and good company, good job, great people. Wrong role for me.
What type of accounting, like tax or?
Yep, tax. Tax. And so not for a big four firm. I was working with small businesses.
Yeah.
And decided I wanted to make the transition to something with a little bit more sales capacity. Is really what I was missing. I was missing engagement.
Right.
From
you wanted to work on deals instead of Excel files.
That's right. That's right.
Can't say I blame you.
That's right. And so I made the transition to banking and was in another role in banking for a short time, a couple months. And at the community bank that I was at, they wanted to kind of revitalize the SBA team.
Was that Lincoln Financial?
Lincoln Savings Bank. Lincoln Savings Bank. And so at that time made the transition to being a lender, and so was kind of helped to spearhead that program, and within the year we were number one lender in the state, routed off 6 in a row. And during that time, of course, just picking up experience both as a lender, but more so as a SBA lender. And so kind of, I say claim to fame, it's not a fame of any manner, but I've actually never originated a non-SBA 7A loan.
Wow.
I haven't done a 504 loan, I haven't done a conventional loan, I haven't done a conventional line of credit or anything like that. That path from just my peers is not common.
Yeah.
Most everybody that's an SBA BDO is coming either from being a broker or a business owner, or they're coming from commercial banking. And so a lot of times on like specifically larger opportunities or something with like real estate, they'll ask, well, what about a conventional or a 504 loan? I'm like,
right.
I can like,
I don't know.
I can tell you enough to be like, I know I can't do this and this is what it might look like, but I don't actually know.
Right. It's definitely a very unique background, though. To your point, a lot of people, they either start working conventional, they get bored of it, and then they go to SBA, or they have some sort of banking background that isn't necessarily SBA pertinent, but close enough or adjacent enough where they know banking and lending that they're just kind of learning the SBA loan program.
That's right. That's right. And I think what was really helpful for me was two things. I didn't have any prior experience with it. So I was a completely blank slate. And I was young, so I didn't have habits. I didn't know what was good or bad to do. And so the experience picked up was, from, of course, doing my own opportunities and financing, but also just learning from the team of experienced lenders, and going through, hearing their stories, or even if I didn't have a loan at loan committee, sitting in loan committee, trying to listen into what they're asking, so that when I do have something that goes to loan committee, you don't want to ask that question, or you want to address it up front so that they don't ask.
So the deals that you were working on at your first SBA bank, Lincoln Savings Bank, were those M&A acquisition deals? Were they all different things like real estate purchase? Had the whole array?
The whole array of SBA. I'll say
in just Iowa or national?
We were doing Iowa and contiguous.
Okay.
So basically the 7 states around Iowa. But we weren't necessarily not looking at M&A opportunities. We just weren't getting them. And so a lot of the stuff that we had was real estate purchases, or equipment purchases, debt refinance. The SBA can be a multi-tool for use of proceeds.
Yeah.
And so we were doing a lot more of that. it wasn't until really flipping over to Fundex when I made the transition of, okay, let's focus in here on change of ownership financing, and really niche into not only SBA but within the M&A space within that, because there can be a lot different between an equipment purchase, for example, 7A, and then also a change of ownership, 7A.
Right, completely different things. So talk about Fundex. So I have some familiarity. I'd worked on some deals that closed at Fundex, and like I can imagine it must have been a cosmic shift from a credit box standpoint, going from a regional SBA bank to a Fundex.
Yep.
Kind of like going to the Wild West.
Yep.
Talk from a high level, Kev, what was that like going from working local, regional to national search fund biz act type deals?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I noticed from the jump was when we were presenting a credit or seeking approval on a credit, I didn't have to educate on what SBA was. And that's not a diss on my prior institution or anything. It just wasn't something that credit or decisioning committee was well versed on, because we weren't an SBA bank. We were a community bank. And so from the jump, I just walked into a team that everybody had singular focus, and that was to be a high-performing SBA 7A shop.
Yep.
And so you're right. It was a very rapid learning curve, which was great. I mean, it really threw me into the flames, and stepping into that high-performing team, it was expected that I produce immediately, and that pressure was good. I needed it. And it really forced me to expand my boundaries and get outside of my shell, to network to more than just my local people. So
maybe just kind of freeze from there. So talk about building the national network. So I've worked at kind of the more local banks where they have a very market focus. One of the banks I was at starting out of college was kind of very Milwaukee area, Waukesha, adjacent or contiguous county focus. And then like I'd been at Byline, Live Oak, not in a lending role, but in a closer role. And the market at both of those is national.
Right.
So how does that work? How does one go from being a BDO or being a lender at one of these very regional banks, having very localized relationships, all of a sudden, Kev, having the whole ocean of sea?
Yeah, so it's definitely a balance. So like a lot of times you're trying to win a relationship, which means you're probably not the first look. But you need to understand that when you're garnishing and trying to gain that relationship. And so the first couple opportunities probably aren't going to be the best ones, but treat them like they're good. Mm-hmm. Go through the diligence, handle them with care, and if it's a no, get to that decision quickly.
Right.
And if it's a yes, make sure it's structured appropriately and hold on that yes. And so those first couple are trying to get that person or that group understanding with the institution that you're at, but also you. Everybody's learning together in those.
Yeah.
And so open line of communication is critical there, because it's a little bit of uncharted territory specifically for that broker in the relationship with that institution.
Yeah.
Everybody handles these a little bit different. The result is the same, or the goal is the same, which is closing and funding. How we all get there is going to look a little bit different in nuance as far as process goes. And so kind of coaching and bringing those relationships up to speed were really, really helpful for me.
Yeah.
And then truthfully, also, I had and I took the time to coach and teach and train new brokers. Where more seasoned BDOs maybe don't have that time to spend in explaining a nuanced thing within the SBA,
brokers,
for
meaning business brokers or loan brokers or both?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So one kind of interesting point of distinction, Ryan. So there are bank and non-bank SBA lenders, as you're aware, but for someone watching this that's not familiar with the difference, so Fundex was not a bank. How do you fund loans as a non-bank SBA lender? How does that work?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways you can do it. We did have an overlying parent company that funded the majority of our loans, and so they had other funding mechanisms to help to afford that for us. Alternatively, you could look at a warehouse line. So basically, the lender would be borrowing funds in order to then subsequently lend them out. And then where the money is made or where a bank would get comfortable is in that spread. So typically, a warehouse line is going to be prime or maybe a little bit below prime.
Okay.
And then with these variable rate SBA loans, you're going to be lending those out at an above prime rate. And so your spread, it's minimized,
right?
But your spread is there for the lender to then, try and capture some income and get comfortable with credits in that manner.
Interesting. So you draw on the line to fund the loan, and then you'd use the gain on sale income to pay back down the line, something along those lines.
Nope, that's spot on.
Interesting. So fast forward to now you're at Trillion. You're working on primarily business acquisition deals.
Probably 97% of my pipeline.
97.74%.
Right. Right.
How do you as a lender, say someone's reaching out to you either directly or through a loan broker like Pioneer, how are you looking at trying to figure out, is this buyer a fit for the business that they want to buy based on experience, personal financial statement, the overall attributes that they bring to the deal?
Yeah. So, looking at it first, I like to say I look at it in a common sense approach. And so I'll use the example of like a blue collar business, call it like a directional drilling company. So they're working in heavy equipment. They play in the dirt all day. Mm-hmm. And we have somebody that doesn't have any industry experience, or maybe they're very, very young and don't have any experience, but they have the financial backing to make the transaction happen. Mm-hmm. My head directly goes to, okay, is our 50-year-old operator that's been doing this since he was 18 going to listen to this young individual that doesn't have experience?
Right.
If I can't connect the dots there, and I feel like, I'm a pretty understanding and forgiving person in that manner. If I can't connect the dots, then how is that 50-year-old blue collar guy going to do the same? And like, why do I answer to this guy now? And so, that's a very like stark example, but it's thinking through it in that manner of, the biggest things to these businesses are the employees. So number one, we've got to make sure, where employees are applicable, but we've got to make sure that we're protecting the house in that manner so that operations can go on without being inhibited.
Right.
If I can get comfortable there, then we'll go into the numbers, make it work from an injection and cash flow standpoint, and structure the loan in that purpose. But really, I start with like, do I feel that this person has the capacity to take over this business and effectively manage the people that it takes to run it? Does that individual buyer have to swing a hammer or turn a wrench? No, of course not. There's so many other things to the operation and to the success of a business. But somebody has to, and they need to be happy with what they're doing just as they are now.
So it sounds like, just to kind of piggyback off your train of thought there, Ryan, it sounds like experience is very important.
Yep.
Let's say you're looking at, just to kind of draw up a hypothetical for the purposes of whoever ends up watching this. Say you have the same deal with two different buyers, all else equal. One of them has a stronger personal financial statement. The other one has more experience. For you as a lender, let's say the person that has more experience but they don't have the personal capital, they can raise the equity from one of these search limited partner funds to get to where they need to get to. How do you look at those two different buyers? Do you prefer the one with the more experience, or do you prefer the one that can put more capital of their own in?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you the easy answer. It depends. But if we're looking at it industry-wise, so the easy one to pick on is licensed business. If it's a licensed business, I'm picking the experienced individual.
Yeah.
If it's a professional service where maybe we've got, staff that can do all the work and all that stuff, it's a toss-up. It's probably go the stronger PFS in that example. But the biggest thing would be, how do we effectively transition the operations?
Yep.
And if that means experience is necessary or licensing is necessary, I'm going to lean that way. If it's maybe not at play or not a consideration there, then I'll, go the other route.
Interesting. So it's not like it. Well, it is very case by case. There's not a hard and fast way of doing it.
That's right. So that's part of why, like, when I made the initial transition, to kind of come back to the beginning of our conversation, I was attracted to SBA because every deal is different. Every business is different. Every business is a living and breathing thing. And so when you're trying to structure a financing for it, not to bash on commercial lenders, but or oversimplify it, but we've got to get to 80% loan to value.
Right.
If we can do that, we've got a deal. Now we waffle on price.
Yeah.
This is not that.
Right.
7A is not that, because we're working with people's livelihood. We're working with the employees and the operations of the business and vendors and everything that goes into it.
And at the end of the day, too, the cash flow repays the loan. So it's like if you're already looking at the assets, you're kind of sort of thinking about the deal going bad.
That's right. And nobody wants to look at it in that, or you shouldn't start looking at it in that manner.
Right.
At least because we need you said it perfectly. We need the cash flow to repay the loan.
Yeah.
And so if it does lead to a much more holistic approach than saying like, oh, we've got this piece of real estate and the guy can put in 15%. Let's do it.
Right. Yeah, I think honestly, Ryan, the only fully collateralized or close to fully collateralized loans in the SBA space I've ever worked on, which you might be surprised there are some, is in the self-storage space. If someone's buying a self-storage at a very attractive, below market, not multiple, price, right? Price appraised value, and based on how much they're putting in, like some of those I saw were fully collateralized, but it's like the unicorn.
Yes. It is.
So
it is, yep. And a lot of times it's because you'll see those go 504, and that's what I know about 504.
Right.
But typically when you're having something fully secured, it's probably going to be projection based, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because even a real estate purchase, the lender should be structuring that, or when eligible, as 100% financing.
Yeah.
Well, there's also going to be fees, and so that indicates it's not going to be fully secured. It's going to be close,
right?
But it's not going to be fully secured, and that's okay with 7A.
Yeah.
And that's part of the perk with utilizing a 7A versus a 504.
Yeah.
In a real estate purchase example, is that you can finance 100% of it.
Interesting. What are some of the so I know we've had kind of this seismic shift that took place back in June when the old guidelines in the program kind of went away and the new guidelines came, and there have been changes there, specifically on things like the down payment requirements, partial changes of ownership, and otherwise. What are some of the changes that you've seen the last couple of years, and maybe sprinkle in the most recent June guideline changes, that have really impacted things like buyer strength, post-close liquidity, and just the caliber of buyer that's out there in the market?
Mm-hmm.
Like this year relative to last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah, so I would say I'll take it back one more year. So like 3 years ago, I think in the space, you were seeing a lot more strategic buys, or like, I'm a general manager, I want to buy the company that I work within. Mm-hmm. And we still see those today. But there has been a lot... a big shift more to higher education and people that are coming out of corporate America or out of a white collar business and stepping into entrepreneurship or to blue collar business.
Yep.
And so that honestly has been really, really good for the space. It's bringing a lot of awareness, and it's bringing fresh blood and fresh cash.
Right.
But so... With more respect to more recent changes, I think with the new guidelines that came into effect in June, of course it is demanding a stronger buyer, because the seller note being on full standby, for example, can no longer be the entire source of the injection.
Right. You have to have, what was it, at least
5% needs to come from a buyer
or
from a buying party.
50% of the 10% down.
You're correct.
Okay.
Yes, 50% of the 10% at a minimum, and then within that you can use raised funds, for example. And so I'd say two things since June. Two things are happening.
Yeah.
One is stronger buyers, because you have to be able to facilitate that now. But two, also, honestly, more complex deal structures.
Yeah.
Because you can no longer fully leverage that seller note.
Right.
Meaning we're seeing more involvement from investors and from invested parties. And of course, they want to have their multiple return. They want to have their investment back and multiple on invested capital. So
right.
It is creating a little bit more complex deal structures. Doesn't mean we can't work with it.
Yeah.
But it takes some, next level thinking about it. And honestly, I've had a couple recently that started a little bit above my head.
Yeah.
And I'll just, I'm pretty point blank. I'll be like, all right, guys, can you just dumb this down for me until I get up to speed here?
Yeah.
And that's worked. That's been very effective.
Right.
Because especially when we have people coming from family offices or small PE firms that are taking a step down to the Main Street level.
Yep.
There can be some terminology that I'm like, all right, hold on, let me figure this out, and I'm with you. Now let's go.
Right.
And so that's kind of what we've been seeing, or what I've seen at least in the last, call it 6 months.
Interesting. Yeah, I've definitely seen there's a lot more, and I think a lot of the people in the SBA land like to use the word minority owner instead of investor.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of these minority owner or investment funds that are GP-led, where essentially it's kind of pooled capital that's really being used to help these people that want to buy these enduringly profitable small to medium-sized businesses with facilitating the down payment requirement that they might not otherwise be able to accomplish. And many of the people that are ultimately beneficial owners want to be part of the success in helping to transition these companies. And, you have people that are coming out of special operations in the military, maybe general managers that want to buy these companies, where simply based on their personal financial statement, they might not have the liquidity or the cash there. But taking this collective effort, if you will, it, one, helps them buy this business, but two, also helps other participants be part of the economics too.
That's right.
So it's incredible, honestly.
It definitely makes it, in the example that you just shared, a general manager buying the company that they work within.
Yeah.
It's very hard to accrue $100,000 or hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings as a W-2 worker. Now, of course, there's other things you can do on the side to generate income and all of that, but that is an example where I think this type of model has really been beneficial, and it's allowing those operators to become a majority owner of the company that they work within and facilitating that, because there's also some level of sweat equity. I mean, if they're the GM, for example, obviously they've been beneficial to the company because it's continued to excel and continue to surge to the point of exit for the original owner or for the current owner. And so that is somebody that we'd like to keep on the deal structure and on the team, because they've obviously shown their benefit to this point.
Yep.
So how do we get it to work on the financial side and get them in as the majority shareholder? Yeah,
I mean, there's definitely a way with creative deal structuring.
That's right.
So, Kev, switching gears back to, Kev, how you think about things and how Trilliant thinks about things in the current market, walk through from a high level the concept of post-close liquidity and how you think about it when you're looking at deals that you're evaluating. And do you want to see it on the buyer's personal financial statement? Could it be the buyer plus other minority owners? Can you look at working capital? How do you look at that, and why is it important?
Yeah, so really kind of our standpoint on it and how I look at it is what type of liquid reserves does a guarantor have, and then what is being supplied with the business sale, if any. So, for example, if there is net working capital transferred with the purchase of a business, and they're giving $200,000 in cash, for example, we can consider that to an extent as post-closing liquidity because it's leverage that we are not having to add to the transaction. Now, does that mean a buyer or a guarantor, for example, can have nothing left at the end? No, but it helps to bridge the gap. Now, from a guarantor standpoint, it's an asset class that we can liquidate in days, not weeks or months. So think, of course, cash or certified deposits or something cash-like assets or stocks and bonds.
So not like a primary house, basically.
That's right. Not a primary house, but if they're utilizing a HELOC or they have a HELOC and the appropriate outside sources of repayment, that can be considered a source of liquidity as well. Because again, it's a quick draw,
right?
And you can have that capital in a day or two.
And so the way to think about the importance of that, just to kind of come full circle here, is if you buy a business and some type of surprise comes up, they need to be able to make the SBA loan payment. There needs to be the importance is that they have the means to do so if it's kind of bumpy post acquisition.
That's correct. Yep, that's correct. So making sure that post acquisition it's a nice, clean, and smooth transition, and that should something come up, whether it be business or personal, we have sufficient funds to get over that. So, for example, on the personal side, let's just say first week, and the air conditioning goes out of your house.
Yep.
And you need $5,000 to fix it. Well, we don't want the guarantor to have to then go borrow from the business to facilitate that payment to fix their house, to fix their air conditioning. On the business side, let's say it's a licensed business, and there's a hiccup in the transition of that license. Well, payroll's still going to go. The operations are still going to go. You still have a monthly loan payment. And let's say maybe there's an issue with the license because of a legal matter. Well, now we potentially have to add legal fees on top of that. Now you can see how quickly we're going to burn cash.
Oh, yikes.
So having reserves there are critical in, I used a pretty egregious example, but it runs out fast, especially if you're buying something of size. We're talking about a $5 million loan. That's what, $65,000 a month generally.
Yeah. Speaking about contingency, I just had to spend $15,000 on it for just a couple months ago.
Yeah. See, there you go.
It's no joke.
It adds up. It adds up. And so, having that cushion there is critical.
Right. Interesting. So I guess maybe just to close. So talk about for anyone that's looking to buy a business, so right now we're shooting this November of 2025. So let's say in the next year, next 12 months, what words of advice would you give them? One, from thinking about common things like saving, liquidity, cash on hand, maybe how much capital they should have to buy a business, assuming no investor equity raise.
Yep.
And or just things about when they're kind of thinking about the financing process, ducks to get in a row to be ready when they're reaching out to someone like you. I know it's kind of a bit of a loaded question, but more in the buyer preparedness side, how should people get ready and kind of thinking about when they're ready to kind of go through this?
Yeah, so I'll answer this in a couple of manners. Number one, the easy answer is save your reserves. Accrue capital, put it away, set it aside. You're going to be using it for your acquisition. So do everything that you can to save money. The other answer would be it would depend on search criteria. So if within your search you're very targeted and I want this industry or I want these few industries, try and develop an experience profile within that industry. And so whether that means getting a W-2 job or engaging in some other manner like a consultant or something to that nature, try and accrue experiences within that so that you can see in your own search, A, is this something that I'm even going to enjoy?
Right.
But B, I'm starting to pick up an experience so that when I do enter into an acquisition opportunity, a lender is going to be like, oh, okay, he's done this before. Sure, it's a short runway, but he showed engagement in getting there.
So if someone wants to buy a funeral home, should they start visiting cemeteries? Okay, that makes sense. Interesting. So try to the degree possible, try to gain somewhat transferable experience and really focus on saving capital ahead of the acquisition. So have as much as possible in your bank account.
That's right. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, thanks for being on the podcast with that name, Ryan.
Yeah.
Appreciate you joining us.